Today, I'm going to tell you about one of sport's most unbelievable stories. It's the story of South African triathlete MHLENGI GWALA. And some of you might recognize that name already from some major news headlines that came out some years ago about a horrific chainsaw attack that almost killed him. But I'm sure most of you haven't heard his full story, and especially about what's been going on recently. So when I first received a message saying, Travis, you need to tell the story about MHLENGI GWALA, and I heard a snippet about some of the things he's been through, I was absolutely blown away, and I couldn't wait to share it with you. So from abusing alcohol that left him in hospital, to saving lives through lifeguarding, to competing internationally in triathlon, to that chainsaw attack, and now most recently to a building literally caving in on him and an anti-doping violation that is controversial to say the least. We've got so much to talk about. Let's get into it. So in order to tell this story well, I need you to picture yourself growing up in rural South Africa, because that's where MHLENGI is from. He actually grew up as a goat herder and was raised a lot of the time by his grandfather, as his father was away working. And his grandfather was a tough man, and goat herding is not an easy job, so MHLENGI attributes a lot of his strength mentally to his childhood. And keep in mind that South Africa isn't an easy place to grow up either, even in the best of times. So again, keep that in mind throughout the story. So MHLENGI grew up very active, participating in a lot of sports like soccer, but karate was actually his main sport, as that's what his father did. But sadly, his father was shot. He survived, but that meant karate was no longer an option. And then as MHLENGI grew older, like many of the other kids in the rural area, they were looking to the city for more opportunities. And he decided to move there, but his mother made him promise to attend university. However, at this time, MHLENGI picked up a bad alcohol problem, which he took with him to the city, and that's where it got really bad, to the point where he found himself in hospital as his liver was shutting down. He lost his job and he failed out of school, and MHLENGI really needed something in his life to change. And that's when he got a lifeline, because one of his friends remembered that he could swim. He used to swim in the rivers while he would tend his goats, and he recommended that MHLENGI try out lifeguarding. So when MHLENGI got out of the hospital and he went to try and become a lifeguard, that's when he learned one of his most invaluable lessons, because the instructor who was supposed to help him and teach him ignored him for the first few weeks he was there. And that's because he was testing MHLENGI, waiting to see whether he was committed or whether he was like a lot of the other people that come there and weren't determined to actually become a lifeguard. Thankfully, MHLENGI was. He was really wanting to change his life, and he stayed committed and was at the pool every day. And sure enough, thanks to that, he ended up becoming a lifeguard. He started a family, and he was introduced to triathlon. Straight away after he found triathlon, he realized he had a talent for it and actually won a local running race on the beach. And things were finally looking up for MHLENGI, who went from needing a lifeline to being able to be that lifeline for so many people. So fast forward a few years now, and MHLENGI was really rising up in the ranks of triathlon and was even able to compete internationally in Chicago and in the Netherlands. And keep in mind again that this is coming from someone growing up in rural South Africa, so this was truly an amazing accomplishment, and he was inspiring a lot of other people around him. Things were looking great. But then, all of a sudden, after winning a local half Ironman distance race, he went for a standard Tuesday morning bike ride, and everything would change, because 3 large men with a gun and a chainsaw stopped him, and they dragged him into the bushes where they began to saw at his right leg. They damaged his left leg as well in the process, but they made it 80% of the way through his right leg before the blunt chainsaw wasn't able to make it through, and the men decided to leave MHLENGI there. MHLENGI has no idea why these people attacked him or why they left him. And as MHLENGI lay there to die, he thankfully remembered his daughters and managed to get up and bring himself back to the road from which he was taken.
They cut, and then they left me lying on the ground. And then the first thing that came in my mind was my kids. And then I was thinking that if I'm lying down here, there will be no daddy at home. So then I stood up.
And he flagged down someone who managed to take him to the hospital. This story made widespread news, like I said in the beginning, and amazingly, MHLENGI recovered and he was able to start competing in triathlons again. And it was now competing in paratriathlon as he did lose a lot of function in that right leg. His mindset, his attitude, and his determination inspired thousands of people, and a lot of people got behind MHLENGI, and he started to see success in paratriathlon, and he even began dreaming of competing at the Tokyo Olympics. But then everything, like it so often does for MHLENGI, turned again for the worst, and due to those same injuries, 2 years later, he had to have his leg amputated because of an infection. And also at this time, it was COVID, so going through this amputation with no one around was extremely tough for MHLENGI. But still, despite all this, somehow MHLENGI fought back and he found himself back in the gym not long afterwards, and the dream of making it to the Olympics was still alive. Now, MHLENGI could have fallen back into alcohol and depression or just given up at this point, but he really attributes everything to the support of those around him, and he believes so much in how having people love you is everything.
Don't sweat. 220K. Don't sweat. 210. Don't sweat. 210K.
And because of those that he had, he found himself again finding success in triathlon, now with his prosthetic leg, which was much harder than he thought it was going to be for him when he first started to run in it.
To get a leg, it's not like you're buying new shoes in shop. Then you're gonna take it and fit it and then go. I said to them, yo, I'm a strong person. It's gonna be easy for me to fit this thing and walk. I cried.
Oh.
I promise you, I cried.
But he was determined, as he always was, just like with the lifeguarding, and was winning some important races in 2021 that looked like he might be able to make it. Unfortunately for MHLENGI, the Tokyo Olympics just came a little too soon and he wasn't able to be classified just yet. But that meant his eyes were firmly set on going to the Paris Olympics at this point. In 2022, things were really looking on track. His fitness and his speed were there, and he was winning some big races that were putting him well on track to qualifying for the Paris Olympics, and was even told that the Boston Marathon was going to have him come run their whole marathon and fly him out and support him in doing so. Everything turned again for the worst this last year in February, when he received an email out of nowhere saying that he had tested positive for a banned substance, GW1516. And MHLENGI at the time didn't even know what this was. He didn't even realize what he had done. He was told in that email he must sign an admission of guilt, which would leave him with a 4-year ban, and he had to publicly announce it and write a letter of apology. And at the time, without money to fight it, MHLENGI thought that that was his only option, and it completely devastated him. It actually took him a while for him to tell someone, but thankfully he did, and he told one of those close friends who had been with him through a lot of what he'd been through, and that man advised him to not sign anything if he hadn't done anything wrong, which MHLENGI knew he hadn't. He had unfortunately just bought a supplement over the counter at a retailer that is well known in South Africa called Clicks. He had purchased a GNC supplement there, which was labeled as stim-free, and this banned substance wasn't listed on the ingredients list. Now, MHLENGI didn't have any anti-doping training before this, and he didn't realize the risk of potentially buying a contaminated supplement, and he said had he had that education, he wouldn't have found himself in this situation. But now, unfortunately, even though they knew what he had taken and they could see that that banned substance wasn't in the ingredients list, they still had to prove that to World Triathlon. The problem is, when they contacted those who had sent the original email, they said that they needed to find an unopened package of that same product from the same batch number and send it to Rome for testing. Now that seemed like a massive hurdle at first, just to find the product, but somehow they were able to find an unopened one also from the same batch number. And things were looking up. But then the next hurdle was that they had to ship it from South Africa all the way to Rome, and in order to prove to customs to not open that product to ship it all the way out there, you have to have a lot of documents, which they couldn't get. Thankfully though, MHLENGI's friend and supporter was able to take that product with him on a business trip when he went to Germany, and then was able to ship that to Italy, and they were able to get it tested, and of course they found the banned substance in there. It was contaminated, and it looked like MHLENGI was going to be in the clear. However, he still received an 11-month ban despite the proof that it was a contaminated substance. So they felt extremely hard done by, but these are the rules, and it cost MHLENGI pretty much a year of some of the most important races that he needed to compete in order to get to the Paris Olympics in this upcoming year. And what was even more frustrating is that when they contacted Clix and Clix referred it to GNC International, GNC took no responsibility for the product, and they denied and refuted any claims that the banned substance was in that product, and they offered MHLENGI no compensation at all. And another sad thing is that the media outlets took a sensational approach when announcing the news about MHLENGI's ban, obviously to get more clicks on their news site, and MHLENGI's name was really dragged through the mud. Then again, everything turned for the worst when a building literally collapsed on him as he was still working as a surf lifeguard at this time and went to shower after work in a council building, and the building collapsed on his good leg. Now, I was sent pictures of this, and I will blur them out for you because the damage was so severe, and this really set MHLENGI back. He was in hospital for over a month because of an infection again. Things were really looking down for him. But amazingly, again, what he attributes to the support of those around him, he made it back and started training again, and thankfully MHLENGI just finished up his ban, and he already has won his first race back racing because, as you might have guessed it, he never quit despite all of that. Despite the building collapsing in on him and recovering from that injury, despite the doping ban, and despite everything that had happened in the past where 99.9% of us would have quit by this stage, he kept going. That is why I was so excited to share this story with you. None of this, as you could imagine, scares MHLENGI. He's got his head down and he's working hard like he always does. And he's getting ready for whatever race he can get to. And he really believes he can still make it to the Paris Olympic Games, although it is going to be so tight because triathlon, unlike a lot of other sports, you have to accumulate enough points, and so oftentimes those who race the most go to the Olympics versus those who are unable to race a lot, even though they might be better. So MHLENGI now has the big hurdle of trying to get to a lot of races which occur in Europe to accumulate enough points to go to the Olympic Games, which he thoroughly deserves to go to as he's one of the best paratriathlon athletes. That's where you could come in and support him, as they've started a fundraiser for him to help him get to some of these races and to potentially reach that Olympic dream, and he's really hoping, if he gets there, to get a podium. If that's something that you're interested in, I've put the link in the description, and at the very least, I'm sure you probably have already planned to, but go follow MHLENGI wherever you can and give him some encouragement and be inspired by his amazing story. Hopefully, no more turns in MHLENGI's life that I will have to tell you about in the future, but only his successes. He still continually thanks and is so grateful for those around him. He's also right now setting up a non-profit called Ubuntu to help others like him that are less fortunate in South Africa to make it in sport. And that's just unbelievable from someone like him who needs a lot of support and finances himself, looking to support and bring up others around him. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you got a lot out of it. If you want to know more, please reach out, please contact me, and of course, go follow MHLENGI. See ya.